Hello friends, welcome to the actuarial sessions. We're moving on to the chapter 3, cash flow models. This chapter will cover theoretical part as well as a little bit of mathematical calculations as well. So in this slides, that is the first part of this chapter. I'm going to cover what is exactly the cash flow process and what are the different scenarios of cash flows. So let me move on to the introduction part of it. So what is exactly the cash flow process is? It is a management of various cash flows or money received or paid at different times. The timing of the cash flows may be known or uncertain. The amount of individual cash flows may be known or uncertain in advance as well. For example, a company operating or managing any public infrastructure like bridge, tunnel will receive toll payments. Simultaneously, they will be paying maintenance charges like debt repayments and other expenses. So this slide clearly explains that there are two types of cash flows. One is a positive and negative cash flows. Positive in the sense the income or the revenue which you earn, as explained here in the example that company receives toll payments, which is nothing but the revenue. On the other hand, the maintenance charges or the debt repayments which they receive and which they are incurring, are the expenses. So they are called as positive and negative cash flows respectively. So positive means the inflows of the income, and the negative cash flows indicates the expenses or the outflow. So outline some cash flows, both positive and negative, that will occur in the next month, where one of the parties involved in the cash flow is you and your employer. So in the case of you, that is a person who is working in the company as an employee, the positive cash flows involved will be nothing but receiving your salary and borrowing some money from a friend. On the other hand, the negative cash flows will be nothing but the expenses incurred by you, that is repaying some borrowed money, buying something from a shop using cash. So if you buy something, you have to pay money in return. These are expenses. On the other hand, from the employer's perspective, the positive cash flows are nothing but receiving payment for supplying products or services. Example, receiving premiums. Say if it's an insurance companies, if they are policy holders applying for any insurance policies, so they have to pay premiums to the insurance company. So in return, the companies are receiving premiums, which are nothing but the positive cash flows. And in turn, the negative cash flows are nothing but paying salaries to the employees. This is nothing but the CTC to the company and paying property expenses, example, electricity bills. Simple as that. The amount and timing of cash flows will be known with great certainty. For example, an employed person who gets paid last Friday of every month will be almost certain to receive payment on the last Friday of this month. So amount of the payment is also certain. Let us see one example of how they've explained this fact. Now, this is a question which is asked in your core module, the CM1 material itself, that list reasons why the person is not completely certain of receiving the payment on the last Friday of the month. So the payment might not be made if the employer makes an error or goes bankrupt, or the bank makes an error and doesn't make the payment on the due date. The person leaves the company before the end of the month. The last Friday is a public holiday and other arrangements take place. So for instance, this is say you are a person A who are going to receive the payment on behalf of B. So A means you are an employee and B is the employer. Okay. So the payment, if it is made, it has to be done through an intermediate person or any organization, say that is a bank. Okay. Let's consider that this is a bank. And now there are three chances of the payment not being received by Mr. A. Okay. And what are those three chances? As mentioned in this solution, either the employer or the company makes an error or goes bankrupt, which is B. The bank makes an error and doesn't make the payment on the due date, which is your bank as I shown in this diagram. And the person, that is A, who is an employee, leaves the company before the end of the month. Okay. Or the last Friday is a public holiday and other arrangements are in place. So The fourth one is nothing but the situation of the payment rather than the person doing the individual mistakes. The situation will be like a public holiday coming in between. Okay, that's the best example to explain the reasons why the payment might be delayed. So next is, after explaining the cash flow process, we'll move on to the examples of cash flow scenarios, or in other words, various investment alternatives also. You can also call it as investment alternatives and investment channels. So there are 8 scenarios given to you. And the first scenario is a zero coupon bond. The second is a fixed interest security, index linked security, cash on deposit, an equity, annuity certain, interest only own, and finally a repayment loan. So we will focus on the first 4 examples in this presentation or PPT. So moving on to the next slide that explains the first scenario, that is a zero coupon bond. So what is exactly this instrument is? Okay. It is a security. This instrument is a security as per the contract that the issuer assures to pay a specified lump sum to the investor at some specified future date or at the end of the tenure. So simple, there are 2 parties. One is the issuer who issues the bond instrument to the investor who want to purchase it, and the investor is the one who acquires that bond, and he becomes the holder of the bond or the owner of the bond, you can say, or owner of that any instrument which he purchased. For the investor, the initial payment is a negative cash flow as money outgo is happening from his pocket. So initially, if the investor is interested to purchase an investment product, say in this case a zero coupon bond, he has to pay something in return to the one who is issuing, right? So the initial payment is a lump sum, negative cash flow as the money is flowing out of his pocket. So the final payment will be a single loan positive cash flow as he will be receiving the lump sum return at the end of the tenure. So note one thing, whatever transaction or whatever contract is being taking place between the issuer and the investor, it is for a particular tenure, right? So the bond instrument is being purchased for a set or a specified tenure given at the date at which the investor has to the issuer has to redeem the payment back to the investor for the bond instrument which he has invested in. Okay. So the final payment will be a single loan positive cash flow as he will be receiving a lump sum return at the end of the tenure. Here, the issuer of the zero coupon bond or the issuing body can be a government or any organization. So remember one thing, any debt instrument which is issued by the government, it is known as a bond. But if it is issued by an organization, it is known as a debenture. Okay, that fact is not mentioned here in this slides, but there is a point of information which I want to share with. So if a government issues, that becomes a bond, and if an organization issues, that becomes a debenture. Here, the final payment made to the investor of a zero coupon bond may not be certain as the issuer may default due to various reasons. Here, the chance of default is more from the organization, whereas the chance of default from the government is negligible since the government can always raise taxes. So if a government issues a bond, the investor will feel safe. So they will feel as if like they've invested in a bank FD. So you are guaranteed, you are sure to get your interest payments on the fixed deposit, or they have invested in savings. So they are sure to get their periodic interest. The same is the case with government-based bonds. So that ensures safety and guaranteed returns. A zero coupon bond behaves like a loan for the issuer. Here the lender is the investor. So it's the zero coupon bond is like a debt instrument, it's like a debt or a money, borrowed by the issuer from the investor. So the investor is behaving like a lender here. For example, the investor may give the issuer of the zero coupon bond 4 lakh GBP, and in return, the investor will receive 5 lakh GBP from the issuer in exactly 5 years' time. The issuer may be a government or a large company. So note one thing, in the case of such instruments like bond, if the investor has paid some specified amount of money or lump sum to the issuer, it is not certain or sure that the same amount exactly will be received by the investor. It could be more or less. So here you can see the investor has spent around some 4 lakh GBP in the beginning of the zero coupon bond for a 5-year tenure. And at the end of the 5th year, he is receiving an amount greater than 4 lakh GBP, as if you can see. So from the investor's perspective, in a zero coupon bond, at the beginning of the 1st year, which is indicated by 0, at the start of the 1st year, the investor is spending 4 lakh GBP, which is shown as a negative sign, because that's a cash outflow from the investor. And at the end of the 5th year, he is receiving an amount greater than 4 lakh, which is 5 lakh GBP. So it's shown by plus. So this first diagram shown by the line timeline is from the investor's perspective. Whereas if you look that same problem from the issuer's perspective, it is the reverse. How? Since the issuer is issuing a debt instrument, he is receiving the money. So that will be a positive cash flow for him in the beginning. And at the end, he has to pay back the investor the 5 lakh GBP as asked in the question. So that 5 lakh is a negative cash flow for the issue at the end of the 5th year. So this is a zero coupon bond having only 2 sets of payments. One at the beginning of the year and one at the end of the tenure, you can say. A fixed interest security, moving on to the next part after zero coupon bond is. So a fixed interest security can be issued by any government, industrial company, local authority to raise money by floating a loan on stock exchange. In many such instances, a loan takes form of a fixed interest security, which is issued in bonds of a stated nominal amount. The holder of the bond will receive a lump sum of specified amount at some specified future time, together with a series of regular level interest payments, which is known as coupons, until the repayment of the lump sum. So this fixed interest security is having an additional property besides the zero coupon bond. So what happened in zero coupon bond is you had 2 parties, that is the investor and the issuer, as I am denoting here by drawing it in short. Okay. Here the investor would like to apply for a fixed interest security where he has to pay some amount of lump sum to the issuer. Okay. And in return, the issuer will pay the investor the full redeemed amount at the final year. Yes, that is true, just like a zero coupon bond. But one additional set of streams of payments will be received by the investor, that the investor will receive from the issuer besides the final amount. That is nothing but the regular interest payments, which could be on a yearly basis, which could be on a monthly basis, or which could be on a half-yearly basis. Okay. So that regular level interest payments will be of a fixed amount. So once if I say the investor will receive 500 GBP at the end of every year, so he will receive 500 throughout, depending on the tenure determined. And at the year end, the investor will receive the final interest payment, that is 500, plus whatever amount he had invested or paid to the issuer initially at the beginning, so which is the lump sum amount. So in short, the issuer will pay the investor at the end of the tenure the lump sum amount plus the final interest interest payment to the investor. So this is exactly a property of a fixed interest security. So we'll look ahead what they have mentioned here. So the investor has an initial negative cash flow, a single known positive cash flow on the specified future date, and a series of smaller known positive cash flows on a regular set of specified future dates. So a series of smaller known positive cash flows means the series of interest or the coupon payments where the investor is receiving for the purchasing or investing in a fixed interest security. So this is the best example of a fixed interest security here. An investor might buy a 20-year fixed interest security of nominal amount or the proper amount of 10,000 GBP. This means that the face value of the loan is 10,000. The investor is unlikely to pay exactly 10,000 for this security, but will pay a price that is acceptable to both parties. This may be higher or lower than 10,000. The investor will then receive a lump sum payment in 20 years' time. So note one thing, the duration of the fixed interest security in this case is 20 years. So n is, you can say n is equal to 20, that is n is number of years, that's 20. So this lump sum is most commonly equal to the nominal amount, in this case 10,000, but could be a pre-specified amount higher or lower than this. The investor will also receive regular payments throughout the 20 years of say 500 per annum. Now these regular payments could be made at the end of each year or half year or at different intervals. Okay. So in this case, for easy understanding, you consider that the interest payments which the investor is going to receive will be on a yearly basis, that is at the end of each year. Okay, so for easy understanding, we will take that as a criteria. So this is the answer which I've shown in the form of a diagram or in a timeline time series chart, where the investor is paying the initial amount for the fixed interest security, which is minus 10,000 to the issuer. Okay, and parallelly, the investor receives 500, which is a positive cash flow at the end of each and every year at regular intervals. And at the final year, which is the 20th year, he will receive the full amount of 10,000 plus the final interest put together, that is 10,500. So in short, the issuer will pay 10,500 rupees along with the 10,500 GBP along with 500 GBP put together for the entire 20 years to the investor. So the investor will receive a very good huge amount of income from the issuer. So this was the best example of fixed interest security, where the amount was fixed, the interest was fixed, and the redemption amount was also fixed. Okay. Now we'll move on to an index linked security, which is slightly different from zero coupon bond and fixed interest security. So what does exactly an index linked security means? So these securities relates to the real-time price fluctuation, which is a live data based price fluctuation. Here the inflation is a tool which is used to measure the value of a security. Inflation is often measured by reference to an index. Inflation is a measure of the rate of change of the price of goods and services, including salaries. High inflation implies that prices are rising quickly, and low inflation implies that prices are rising slowly. Now, with the convention of fixed interest securities, the interest payments are of the same amount because the sum invested is nominal amount and not inflation adjusted. Which means, in the case of fixed interest security and zero coupon bonds both, we didn't consider the real-time price fluctuation which is happening in the environment, in the nation or in an economy. So that was not taken into consideration. Only just the face value or the amount specified in the contract while purchasing the debt instrument was clearly mentioned. That's all. So here, if the inflation criteria is taken into consideration, or if the real-time price fluctuations are synchronized with the actual value of the security or the investment product, then that behaves like an index-linked security. Okay, so if the inflation pressures are not under control, as mentioned in the last point of the slide, the purchasing power of the money diminishes. I repeat, if the inflation pressures are not under control, the purchasing power of the money diminishes with the passage of time significantly, so when the rate of inflation is high. For this reason, some investors are attracted by a security for which the actual cash amount of interest payments and of the final capital repayment are linked to an index which reflects the effects of inflation. Here, the initial negative cash flow is followed by a series of unknown positive cash flows and a single larger unknown positive cash flow at the end, all on specified dates. So if you remember in the first intro of the slides, I mentioned that there are amounts and timing of the payments may be uncertain. So this is the best example to give an understanding, or a best example to illustrate that the amount to be paid, only the amount to be paid is uncertain, or the amount of the positive cash flows or the negative positive cash flows which is to be received by the investor is uncertain. Okay. However, it is known that the amount of the future cash flows relates to an inflation index. Hence, these cash flows are said to be known in real terms. Real terms means taking into account inflation, whereas nominal or money terms means ignoring inflation. That's very clear. So that will make you understand the difference between real and nominal. So this is a very common question asked not only just in code in your CM1, but also in subjects like economics, which is CB series, core business model. You're going to have economics that will be dealing with concepts like real terms and nominal terms theoretically. So we move on here further. For example, if your salary is rising at 5% per annum and inflation is 7% per annum, your salary is falling in real terms, as you will be able to buy less with your higher salary, even though your salary is rising in nominal or money terms, which means your actual performance of the salary in terms of nominal values is doing well. But because of the diminishing purchasing power due to rising prices of goods and services, the real value of your salary is falling down, or the real value of your salary is diminishing as well. So the purchasing power with respect to your salary would also fall. Okay. So this inflation normally determines the cost of living. That is a main big, that is a big criteria that determines your index-linked security. So for an index-linked bond, the cash flows are known in real terms but are unknown in nominal or money terms. Mathematically, it is calculated as, in terms of interest rates, we define a relationship as real interest rate is equal to nominal rate minus the inflation rate. This is just a formula which I removed from my side, just as a piece of information for you all. So this will easily explain what is the relationship between real and nominal using this mathematical formula. So you have here. So for a fixed interest bond, on the other hand, the cash flows are known in nominal or money terms, but are unknown in real terms. Both the regular interest payments and the final capital payment from an index-linked security are linked to the inflation index, okay, which is a real-time based information. So if inflation is high, then the regular payments will rise by larger amounts than if inflation is low. Now, if inflation is 10% per time period and the regular interest payments after one time period is 500, and the payment after two time periods will be 550. That is 500 into 1.1. Okay. So they have said here that after a period of one time period, the inflation was just 1.10 raised to 0. Okay. So 500 multiplied by 1.10 raised to 0 would have given you the same amount, which is 500, because anything raised to 0 is 1. Now, why I'm considering this as 1.10 is, say for 1 GBP, there is an increase of 10% of the price. So that would become 1.10. So this is for 1 year, right? So if it's for 2 years, it will become 1.10 squared. And if it's for 3 years, it will become 1.10 cube, and so on. So here in this case, if inflation was 10% per time period, after one time period, it would have been just 500. Then the payment after two time periods will be 550, which is 500 into 1.1 raised to 1. And after three time periods, it would have been 500 into 1.1 raised to 2, which is 605. Now, inflation is often measured by the reference to an index. For example, inflation index might take values as set out in the table below. So this is the index table given to you for reference. Okay. So index as on 1st January 2015, 1st January 2016, and 1st January 2017, and 1st January 2018. The data is given to you for the on a yearly basis. So as inflation occurs on different time periods, here the frequency is yearly on a yearly basis. So how would you calculate, or how would you find what is the rate at which the inflation is performed, whether it's increasing or decreasing? So the rate of inflation of above table is calculated by using the formula as new index minus the previous index divided by the previous index. Just like you calculate population census, where the new population minus the previous population upon the previous population, we find out what is the increase, what is the rate of the increase or decrease in the population of a particular nation. So the same thing applies here also. You calculate the rate of inflation the same way. There is another alternative formula to calculate the rate of inflation, and there's nothing but new index upon the previous index in the brackets and minus 1. So here the rate of inflation in the above table using the formula will be, for 2016 it would be, we'll apply the formula as 105 minus 100 divided by 100, okay, which will be 0.05 or 5%. If you multiply the 0.05 by 100, you will get as 5%. This is the case for the increase of the inflation rate at the year 2016. So from 2015 to 2016, the rate of inflation increase was 5%. Now, moving from 2016 to 2017, what was the rate of increase of the inflation from 2016 to 2017? That would have been 108 minus 105, okay, divided by 105, which is the new minus old divided by the old. You get this at 2.86% or 0.0286, which was 2.86%. The same thing will apply for 2018, considering the increase from 2017 to 2018. You will get it as 4.6%. Okay. So this is how you calculate the rate of inflation increase as explained in the table. Okay. So let us consider another question as given in the core reading material for you. An investor purchased a 3-year index-linked security on 1st January 2015. In return, the investor received payments at the end of each year, plus a final redemption payment, all of which were increased in line with the index given in the table above or below. You can see. The payments would have been 600 each year. Now they have given the actual interest payment, which was 600, and the final redemption amount would be 11,000. 11,000 redemption if there had been no inflation. Okay. So these are the nominal values, considering there was no inflation, right? Now, if inflation is involved, you will get the real values. So how will you obtain those real values? So you will calculate the payments actually received by the investor referring to the given index table. Okay. This is nothing but the same index table which was explained in the previous sum. So you will draw a timeline as usual. Okay. Now, how would you explain this chart? See, now here you will consider the base index as 100 as given in the previous question, or the base index as of 2015 was 100. So you will calculate the rate of inflation increase from 2015 to each and every year. That is from 2015 to 2016, what was the increase? From 2015 to 2017, what was the increase? And from 2015 to 2018, what was the increase? So you will use the 100 as a base to obtain the real values or the real inflation rate and multiply that with 600, or multiply it with your interest rate and the final redemption value. So let us see how they have done it. So this is nothing but you multiply 600 to the new value 105 or the new index 105 divided by the previous index 100, which is 630. And for the year 2017, we multiply 600 to 108, which was in the year 2017, the index was 108. So that you will divide it by the index of 2015, which was 100, and obtain the value. And similarly, we'll do for 2018, the same thing. But for 2018, you will calculate the index even for the redemption amount, because that is the final year. So that will add 11,000 plus 600 multiplied by 113 by 100. So note one thing, the nominal value which is multiplied by the inflation adjusted rates will give you the real value in this case. So the income streams which the investor receives, that will be different from the actual nominal value of 611,000, and that will be 630, 648 and 13,108. So these are the amounts or the payments or the cash flows which have to be paid by the issuer to the investor. Okay. So this is an example of index-linked security. So you can see the timeline. So at the end of each year, by default, the inflation index would be 105 by 100, and for the second year it is 108 by 100, and in third year it is 113 by 100. So it's very clearly diagrammatically represented. So you can multiply it with the 600, and final year it is multiplied by 600 plus 11,000. So I didn't mention 11,000. Okay. So this is how you obtain the income payments or the income streams in the case of index-linked security. So moving on to the next and last concepts of this presentation is cash on deposits. Now, if a cash is placed on deposit, the investor can choose when to disinvest and will receive interest additions during the period of investments. The interest additions will be subject to regular change as determined by the investment provider. These additions may only be known on a day-to-day basis. The amounts and timings of cash flows will therefore be unknown. This is describing a bank account that pays interest and allows instant access. Consider your own bank account. You can choose when to invest money, that is pay money in, and when to disinvest money, that is withdraw. So this is a terminology that, or this is in one kind of an investment alternative or one cash flow scenario where you are exactly depositing your money or investing it in one particular through one particular channel. Okay, and accordingly, this interest additions will be subject to regular change as determined by the investment provider. So it will be like depositing your money in a particular bank account where you will receive guaranteed returns, but depending on the tenure or depending on a yearly, quarterly, or a monthly basis. So this is one method of cash flow scenario. Okay. That's all, friends. That's the end of part 1 of this topic or this chapter. We'll move on to the second part in the next session. Till then, thank you. Don't forget to share, comment, and subscribe my YouTube channel.